So the first one was an amazing success. The second time we brewed this was just an unmitigated disaster.
Loki had his hand in our brew day. Complete mischief, nothing went according to plan.
Welcome back to another episode of 2.5 Pints Homebrew, where we review the Asgardian Belgian Blonde Ale.
This is the second time we brewed it. It went a lot smoother last time.
Chad, you came up with this recipe. What was your inspiration for it?
One night, me, Ben, and Brandon, the shy guy from the other video, were playing apples to apples. Brandon didn't know what a card was and just tossed it in.
He throws down the cards and goes, ABBA?
Yeah, he didn't even know that it was ABBA. He just said ABBA, aka one of the best bands of all time. Dancing Queen? Come on. Never heard of it. So I was thinking to myself, oh, that's too good. Like, we've got to do something related to Brandon having no clue who ABBA was. And we were also wanting to do a Belgian Blonde, and I was like, you know what? Asgardian Belgian Blonde Ale, ABBA.
So for the artwork, I totally just spoofed a Amon Amarth's Twilight of the Thunder God album cover. I got Thor in his leisure suit, sort of middleized the ABBA logo, because I'm really into that Scandinavian death metal. So he comes up with the name. So we take, look in Beersmith, look at what goes into a Belgian Blonde Ale, and then try to figure out how to make it Asgardian to make the pun work. I looked into some of like these Norse brewing traditions. We used some Rye Malt. Back in the day, the malt was smokier. It wasn't as clean as modern day malts, so we used a little bit of smoked malt. For the water tun, they used juniper boughs as like a filter. So we added some juniper berries, and then we used the honey like mead does. So it was basically working backwards from the goofy pun, that like, how do we make a beer that sort of like stays true to this pun? Use a grain bill that's more like some traditional Norse stuff, but use the Belgian yeast and try to have it conform to a Belgian Blonde Ale. When we first brewed this, you were really into the Thor comic books.
Yeah, Jason Aaron, Thor run.
This was way before Thor Ragnarok, which is one of my favorites.
I think it was like right before the Dark World came out, so in the dark times of the Thor.
Yeah, so Thor as a movie character, it was probably like the lowest of the Marvel superheroes. I did read all of the God Butcher. This was based on like that era Thor comic books.
It ended up being a great beer. We wanted to do it again, so we're here.
And that's probably where the disaster began. So let's go through what went wrong. First off,
did we run out of propane?
We ran out of propane. So we go get some more propane, then it boils over. It was a really hot day, so it took like 4 hours to cool down. We ended up putting in the fermentation chamber and sitting around playing Mario Kart as usual until it actually read somewhere near 70. We pitched the Imperial Gnome yeast. So how did it smell while it was fermenting?
Pure flatulence.
It smelled like a butt.
Awful. Sulfur, rotten. I was concerned. Like, that did not smell good at all. I was very worried that smell was gonna be what it tasted like.
And I was like, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. We go to bottling day. It's still, the fermentation chamber smelled like farts.
Yeah, and on top of that, the regulator on the CO2 tank.
It's a little unwieldy, maybe a little unbalanced.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of weight over here and none over here. Top heavy at that, and it completely fell over, knocked open the fermentation chamber overnight, I might add, and I didn't discover that it was like that until the very next day, whenever we were going to actually be bottling.
So we had no CO2, so we couldn't do our, this is the second time we're bottling under pressure with the Blickman beer gun, and we had no CO2 tank, no spare one. The gas stores, every gas store in town is closed on the weekend. So if you're out of CO2 on the weekend, tough luck.
Yeah.
So we just bottled it in the bottling bucket, the old-fashioned way. It still smelled like farts. It dissipated, but I learned later that if you add like some copper, like submerge some copper in there, it'll neutralize the sulfur. So it was too late to do that. I was afraid now we had bottled farts. It smelled like something, some of those recipes that Owen comes up with on our B-roll.
Yep. Smells like a dead animal.
It tasted the best.
What'd you put in your beer?
100 bites of jalapenos.
100 bites of jalapenos?
100 slices.
Oh my goodness, and what else?
A lot of spicy chips. It was great.
So, you made a spicy beer?
Yes, but I liked it.
Yeah, it took like 2 months to carbonate
Yeah.
because the yeast is really fluctuant. I guess there was hardly any yeast in suspension. We didn't re-yeast it. We should have, now that I think about it, but
However, the fate of the gods smiled on us because the beer actually turned out to be delicious.
all right, you poured your beer better than I did. But as you can see, it's actually carbonated now.
Quite carbonated.
Now we've actually got some head on here. It's kind of a nice amber, it's not totally pale, but it does have smoked malt, it's got rye malt, and it's got some honey malt in it as well. We did the Hochkurz mash on this, so I think that's why we actually have beautiful head retention. Man, the head looks gorgeous now. This used to be the worst flaccid beer in the entire world.
Yeah, admittedly, my first couple of ones, I was just like, I poured it and I was just like, okay, and just like turn it all the way up just to get some.
And we had the highest yield of any beer that we've done before.
Makes a lot of these bad boys.
So I was like, oh great, if this one sucks, we got 60 bottles to go through between
a
the two.
fart beer.
It's more than 60 bottles.
Yeah. So aroma does not smell like farts.
We're getting some pepper.
I feel like you can tiny little hint of the juniper. You can definitely smell like the yeast is, I mean, very pronounced.
Yeah. Very yeast forward, but you get a little smoked malt too. This one just keeps getting better and better every time I taste this.
Mouthfeel, perfect carbonation.
That's the part where it keeps improving. But now it's incredibly lively, fluffy almost. You know, just like effervescent.
Very effervescent. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Also, I think that the smoked malt, that's what separates this from your typical Belgian beer.
Yeah, it's still subtle. It's not anywhere near a Rauch beer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Damn fine beer.
Just about perfect. It took a long time to get there, but.
So this is our third time that we brewed it, I believe.
It's only the second time.
Second?
I calculated. We brewed this one like at least 6 years ago. It was before Owen was born, and he's like 5 something, right?
6 in April.
So yeah, it was at least 6 years ago, maybe 7.
Golly.
This is why we're losing our hair and our
beards.
the gray. It's all downhill.
Either way, here's to not waiting 7 years for part 3.
Scoot, 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 back, booty, booty. Now to my booty, scooty, now to my booty, scooty. Scoot, 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 back, booty, booty. That's my metal voice. So, yeah.
I noticed in one of our videos I was looking a little chonky, so I was like, I'm gonna go cut down on the calories on the beer. So I have been actively trying not to look quite so chonky. Can you tell? I'll put in the most insulting parts about myself in this video. It's not just Olivia that gets stuck with the fart jokes.
Or Brandon. Side note about Brandon. He hasn't talked to us since the last brew day. I sent him a text asking him how he liked his YouTube debut. Radio silence. We love you, Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
He's not gonna watch this.
Brandon, subscribe to our YouTube channel so we have more than 16 subscribers.
Help us, Brandon. You're our only hope.